Roots of discontent. The pungent scent of soil filled Nora Patel's nostrils as she dug her hands deeper into the community garden plot. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the cool spring air, but she didn't mind. This patch of earth had become her sanctuary over the past 3 years. Unlike her apartment, she'd become increasingly uncomfortable with Vincent's constant complaints. "You're going to ruin your nails again," Vincent Davenport remarked from the garden's edge, scrolling through his phone. His tailored navy suit seemed absurdly formal against the backdrop of wildflowers and vegetable patches. Nora looked down at her dirty, crusted fingernails and shrugged. "They'll grow back. The garden won't plant itself." Vincent sighed dramatically. "This is exactly what I'm talking about, Nora. You could be networking at the chamber luncheon with me right now. Instead, you're playing in dirt with." He gestured vaguely toward an elderly woman carefully tending to tomato plants. People who aren't going to advance your career. "Mrs. Abernathy has taught me more about resilience than any networking event could," Nora replied, smiling at the older woman who had become something of a mentor to her. Their relationship had started beautifully 5 years ago. Vincent, the ambitious marketing executive, had been charmed by Nora's authenticity and creative spirit when they met at a mutual friend's wedding. Nora, the community college art teacher, had admired his drive and confidence. But lately, the gulf between their values had widened into an uncrossable chasm. "Your job at that community college is a waste of your degree," Vincent continued, checking his watch impatiently. "My firm has connections to 3 private universities. One call, and you'd double your salary." Nora stood, brushing soil from her jeans. "I love my students. They're passionate about art despite having limited resources. That means something to me." "Passion doesn't pay mortgages," Vincent retorted. "We could be living in Westview Heights by now if you'd just listen to reason." The familiar argument hung between them like an unwelcome guest. Their modest apartment downtown suited Nora perfectly, walking distance to work. Close to her beloved garden, surrounded by local shops and community spaces, Vincent saw it as a stepping stone, a temporary compromise on the path to something grander. "I don't want Westview Heights," Nora said quietly. "I've told you that repeatedly." Vincent's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and straightened his already perfect tie. "Derek just closed the Hartman account. We're celebrating at Elysium tonight." His tone softened slightly as he added, "Come with me. Wear that black dress I bought you for Christmas. Let me show you what you're missing." Nora looked around at the garden, at Mrs. Abernathy's weathered hands gently supporting a young plant, at the neighborhood children learning how seeds transform into food, at the simple beauty of growth. Then she looked at Vincent, handsome and polished, waiting for her to become someone she wasn't. "I think I'm exactly where I need to be," she said finally. 2 weeks later, Nora returned home to find Vincent's closet empty and a note on the kitchen counter. "I can't keep waiting for you to outgrow this phase. I deserve someone with ambition that matches mine. Your small life is suffocating me." The words stung, but as tears blurred her vision, Nora felt something unexpected: relief, like pulling a weed that had been choking a garden bed, making space for something new to grow. Unexpected bloomate. Months after Vincent's departure, Nora stood back to admire the new greenhouse at the corner of the community garden. What had begun as her personal healing project had evolved into something much larger, collaborative effort that had united the neighborhood. The once neglected plot now featured raised beds overflowing with vegetables, a small orchard of fruit trees, and the brand new greenhouse that would extend their growing season. "We did it," she whispered to herself, taking in the golden afternoon light reflecting off the glass panels. "You certainly did," a voice responded, startling her. Nora turned to find a tall man with kind eyes observing the greenhouse. He wore work boots and a simple button-down with rolled-up sleeves, a camera hanging from his neck. "I'm sorry I didn't mean to intrude on your moment," he said with a gentle smile. "I'm Theo Westfield. The city paper sent me to photograph your greenhouse project." "Nora Patel," she replied, extending a soil-stained hand before quickly withdrawing it. "Sorry, occupational hazard." Theo laughed and offered his equally dirty hand. "I've been helping my sister with her farm all morning." Dirt is just evidence of a productive day. Something warm flickered in Nora's chest as they shook hands. The greenhouse was a community effort. You should really photograph Mrs. Abernathy's, our garden matriarch. I'd like to photograph everyone involved, Theo said, but I'm especially interested in the murals I spotted on the garden shed. I'm told they're your work, Nora blushed. Just a little something to brighten the space. They're extraordinary, Theo said with such genuine admiration that Nora couldn't deflect the compliment. The way you've incorporated local wildlife and native plants tells a story about this place. As Theo photographed the garden, Nora found herself talking more freely than she had in months. She learned that Theo had left a corporate photography position to focus on environmental and community projects. His sister, Josephine, ran a small organic farm outside the city where Theo helped on weekends. Corporate work paid well, he explained, as they walked among the garden beds, but I wasn't telling stories that mattered. The day I photographed my 5th identical luxury watch advertisement, something in me rebelled. Nora laughed. I understand completely. Vincent Maix never understood why I wouldn't take a higher-paying position at a private university. What kept you at the community college? Theo asked, genuinely curious. My students, Nora replied without hesitation. Many of them are. Working multiple jobs, raising families, or overcoming personal challenges to pursue their passion for art. Their determination inspires me daily. They spent the afternoon wandering through the garden as Theo photographed and Nora explained the vision behind each section. When Mrs. Abernathy arrived with her famous lavender lemonade, the three sat in the shade discussing plans for garden education programs. You should bring your camera to our harvest festival next month, Mrs. Abernathy suggested to Theo. The children's garden will be in full bloom by then. I'd like that, Theo said, his eyes meeting Nora's briefly. As evening approached and they prepared to part ways, Theo hesitated. This might be forward, but would you be interested in visiting my sister's farm this weekend? She's hosting a farm-table dinner using produce from small farms and community gardens like this one. Nora felt a flutter of nervousness, but found herself nodding. I'd love to see it. Great, Theo beamed. And fair warning, Josephine, we'll probably try to recruit you for her agricultural education. It's a program once she hears about your teaching experience. I wouldn't mind, Nora admitted. I've been thinking about expanding my art classes to include more environmental themes. As she watched Theo walk away, Nora felt something unfamiliar taking root inside her, not the anxious need to change herself. That Vincent had always inspired, but a gentle curiosity about what might grow from this chance encounter. That evening, Nora watered her apartment plants. Her phone buzzed with a text. It was from Theo, a beautiful photograph of her kneeling in the garden, sunlight catching in her hair as she explained something to Mrs. Abernathy with animated hands. The caption read, "Preview from today's shoot. You've created something magical." There. Nora smiled, setting the phone down to finish her evening routine. For the first time in months, she felt perfectly content with exactly where she was and who she was becoming. Cultivation, you've transformed this place, Theo said, helping Nora hang strings of solar-powered lights around the garden's perimeter. 3 months had passed since their first meeting, and the community garden had become their shared passion. We've transformed it, Nora corrected him. Your photography exhibition brought in enough donations for the children's educational area. The summer evening hummed with activity as volunteers prepared for tomorrow's annual garden gala. What had once been a small neighborhood gathering had evolved into one of the community's most anticipated events. Thanks in part to Theo's connections with local restaurants and Nora's expanded art program. Did I tell you the city council approved our proposal? Nora asked, securing the last string of lights. Starting next spring, we'll officially be offering credited art and agriculture classes here. Theo's face lit up. Nora, that's incredible. Your students will, Ms. Patel? Young volunteer interrupted, looking anxious. Or someone asking for you at the entrance? He seems upset. Nora exchanged a puzzled glance with Theo before making her way to the garden gate. The familiar silhouette stopped her in her tracks. Vincent Davenport stood there in an impeccable suit, looking simultaneously out of place and imposing. 8 months had changed him little, perhaps. A new haircut, a more expensive watch. Vincent, she said, surprised by how steady her voice remained. I was in the neighborhood for a client meeting, he replied, though his carefully casual tone suggested otherwise. saw the commotion, and remembered this was your ... project. His eyes traveled over the garden with poorly concealed dismissal. Preparing for tomorrow's gala, Nora explained, suddenly conscious of her dirt-smudged jeans and messy braid. A gala? Here? Vincent's surprise seemed genuine. Who would attend a formal event in a community garden? The mayor, for one, Theo said, appearing beside Nora, along with several restaurant owners, the university chancellor, and about 300 community members. Vincent assessed Theo with a quick, calculating glance. And you are? Theo Westfield, he replied, extending his hand. Environmental photojournalist and garden volunteer. Vincent shook his hand briefly. Vincent Davenport, Premier Properties. Nora and I have history. Uncomfortable silence fell before Nora spoke. Did you need something specific, Vincent? He shifted, suddenly less confident. I heard through mutual friends that you've been doing well. Thought I'd see for myself. His gaze softened slightly. You look good, Nora. Happy. I am, she replied simply. Vincent nodded, then produced a business card. I've moved up to regional director. If you ever want to discuss upgrading from your apartment, give me a call. Could get you an excellent rate in the new Riverside development. Before Nora could respond, Mrs. Abernathy called from across the garden. Nora, dear, the caterer needs your approval on the layout. I should go, Nora said, not taking the card. It was unexpected seeing you, Vincent. As she turned away, Vincent called after her. You know, you could be doing so much more than this, Nora. You always limited yourself. Nora paused, turning back with a calm smile. Actually, I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing, and it's more than I ever imagined. Later, as twilight settled over the garden and most volunteers had departed, Nora and Theo sat on a bench beneath the pergola they had built together. Are you okay? Theo asked gently. That seemed tense. Nora considered the question. Surprisingly, yes. 8 months ago, his opinion mattered so much to me. Now it feels like hearing feedback from a stranger. He still seems to think your work here is small, Theo observed. Nora laughed softly. That's because he measures success vertically. How high can you climb? How much can you accumulate? He never understood that some things grow outward, creating connections and community. Theo took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. For what it's worth, what you've built here is extraordinary. You've created a place where people from every background come together to grow something beautiful. Under the glow of the garden lights, surrounded by the fruits of their shared labor, Nora leaned her head against Theo's shoulder. Tomorrow will be interesting, she murmured. Vincent mentioned he might attend the gala. Are you worried? Theo asked. No, Nora replied truthfully. For the first time in my life, I'm completely confident in the garden I've grown, both literally and figuratively. As nightfall enveloped them, fireflies began to dance among the plants, nature's own version of their string lights. Tomorrow would bring what it would bring. Tonight, she was exactly where she belonged. Harvest season, the garden gala exceeded even Nora's wildest expectations. What had begun years ago as a neglected lot transformed by a handful of neighborhood volunteers was now a vibrant community space filled with elegant tables, fairy lights, and over 300 guests in semi-formal attire. Local chefs had created dishes featuring produce from the garden. Nora's art students displayed works inspired by nature, and the children's choir from the community center performed songs about growth and renewal. Mayor Richardson had just finished a speech praising the garden as a model of sustainable urban development, and presented Nora with a citation for community leadership. I still can't believe this, Nora whispered to Theo as they stood near the refreshment table. She wore a simple emerald dress that complemented the garden setting, pressed wildflower pendant, Theo's gift hanging at her throat. Believe it, Theo replied, squeezing her hand. You created something that resonated with people. Community, sustainability, beauty, these things matter. Ms. Patel called Darius, one of her most dedicated art students. The university representative wants to speak with you about the joint program? As Nora excused herself to speak with the university liaison, she noticed Vincent entering the garden with a striking woman on his arm. He looked polished as ever, though slightly uncomfortable as he surveyed the transformed space throughout. The evening, Nora found herself too busy to worry about Vincent's presence. She moved from conversation to conversation, discussing the garden's educational programs with school board members, explaining cultivation techniques to curious attendees, and introducing potential donors to Mrs. Abernathy, who charmed them. With stories of the garden's impact on neighborhood children, it wasn't until the dessert corsa, honey lavender cake made with honey from the garden's beehives, that Vincent approached her table. "This is unexpected," he said, gesturing to the elegant event around them. "When you said gala, I assumed you meant a neighborhood potluck." "We've grown considerably since you last visited," Nora replied evenly. Vincent nodded, seeming genuinely impressed. "The mayor mentioned your program is receiving state-level recognition, and I overheard someone say you're publishing a book, a guide to community garden education," Nora confirmed. "Theo's photographs, my curriculum designs, and contributions from experts across the country." "Speaking of Theo," Vincent said carefully, "he seems ... substantial, different from your usual type." Nora smiled. "He is different. He sees value in things you taught me to dismiss." Before Vincent could respond, Josephine Westfield approached with the confidence that characterized Theo's sister. "Nora, the university chancellor is raving about your proposal. He wants to implement similar programs across all their campuses." After introductions, Josephine continued, "And the publisher called they want to increase the first print run of your book by 15,000 copies. Apparently, the advance orders exceeded their projections." Vincent's expression shifted as he began to reassess the woman he had once dismissed. "I had no idea your garden project had reached this scale," he admitted. "You've obviously found your ... niche."
"Not a niche," Nora corrected gently. "A purpose."
As Vincent excused himself, Theo rejoined Nora with 2 glasses of champagne.
"Was
"That uncomfortable?" he asked, nodding toward Vincent's retreating figure. "Actually, it was clarifying," Nora replied. "He finally saw what I've been trying to tell him for years. That success doesn't always look like corner offices and luxury condos." As the evening progressed, Nora found herself standing beside the koi pond that marked the garden center. Mayor Richardson was announcing the city's commitment to fund similar gardens in 5 additional neighborhoods. Using their model as a template, Vincent approached one final time, alone. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "I told you that you were living small, but I was measuring by the wrong dimensions." Nora smiled, genuine but distant. "Thank you for saying that. Your photographer seems like a good man," Vincent added. "You look happy together." "We are," Nora confirmed. "We've built something meaningful both here and between us." As Vincent nodded and turned to leave, Nora felt the final thread connecting her to her past gently release. There was no anger, no regret, just the peaceful recognition that sometimes plants thrive better in different soils. Later, as the last guests departed, and only the core volunteers remained, Theo pulled Nora into a dance beneath the string lights. Mrs. Abernathy played something soft on her portable record player, the notes drifting through the night air. To the garden whisperer, Theo murmured against her hair, "You've grown something extraordinary here." Nora looked around at the space they had cultivated together. Not just plants and flowers, but community, purpose, and possibility. "We all did," she replied. "That's the point. The most beautiful gardens are tended by many hands." New growth 2 years after the garden gala that had changed everything. Nora stood in the center of what was now officially named Patel Community Gardens and Education Center. What had begun as a single lot had expanded to encompass 3 adjacent properties featuring specialized gardens for culinary herbs, native pollinators, and a children's sensory exploration area. The small greenhouse where she had first met Theo had been joined by 2 larger structures, one dedicated to year-round vegetable production, and another serving as a classroom space where Nora now taught full-time. Her position at the community college had evolved into directing the new environmental arts program, joint venture between the college, the city, and 3 private universities. Professor Patel called a voice interrupting her reflections. "The film crew is ready whenever you are." Nora nodded to her assistant, a former art student who now coordinated the garden's educational programs. The documentary team from the National Geographic Channel had arrived that morning to feature their community garden model in a series about innovative urban renewal projects. As she made her way toward the main pavilion, Nora passed the mural wall where it had all begun. Her original paintings had been joined by dozens of others, created by community members of all ages during workshops she and Theo conducted. The collective artwork told the story of the neighborhood, its history, challenges, and ultimate revival through shared purpose. "There she is," Theo said warmly as she approached. His camera hung around his neck as always, though these days it was often accompanied by their infant daughter, Amara, in a carrier against his chest. Today, however, Josephine was happily bouncing the baby nearby, giving Theo freedom to photograph the documentary process. "Sorry to keep everyone waiting," Nora apologized to the film crew. "I was lost in thought. Penny for them?" Theo asked quietly as the crew adjusted their equipment. Nora smiled. "I was just thinking about how differently things turned out than I expected. 3 years ago, I was an art teacher with a small garden plot and an ex-boyfriend who thought I lacked ambition," Theo chuckled. "And now you're a published author, program director, and consultant to the Department of Agriculture on urban farming initiatives. Not to mention a mother," and he paused, reaching into his pocket, hopefully. "Something more." Before Nora could process his words, Theo was kneeling before her, a simple wooden box in his hands. The documentary crew paused, cameras forgotten as the moment unfolded. "Nora Patel," Theo said, his voice steady, despite the emotion in his eyes. "You taught me that the most important growth happens when we're rooted in purpose and surrounded by community. I can't imagine my life without you in it." He opened the box to reveal a ring with a small emerald surrounded by tiny seed-shaped diamonds. "Will you marry me here, in the garden we've grown together?" Tears blurred Nora's vision as she nodded, words momentarily beyond her reach. As Theo slipped the ring onto her finger, cheers erupted from around the garden. Mrs. Abernathy, Josephine with baby Amara, students, volunteers, and even Mayor Richardson, who had arrived early for his interview. "I hope you don't mind an audience," Theo whispered as he stood to embrace her. It seemed fitting to share this moment with the community that brought us together. Later that evening, after interviews were completed and congratulations received, Nora and Theo sat on their favorite bench beneath the pergola, now covered with flowering vines. Amara slept peacefully in Nora's arms while Theo showed her the photographs he had taken throughout the day. "Got a message from Vincent," Nora mentioned casually. "We saw the feature about our garden model in Business Weekly. He started a foundation to fund similar projects in underserved communities and wanted our input." Theo raised an eyebrow. "You going to help?" Nora nodded. "Growth comes in many forms. I think his is genuine." As twilight settled over the garden, bringing with it the familiar dance of fireflies, Theo wrapped his arm around his new fiancée and daughter. "So, Professor Patel, what's next for this garden of ours?" Nora leaned against him, content in the life they had cultivated together. "That's the beautiful thing about gardens," she replied softly. "There's always another season, another chance to plant something new." Above them, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, mirroring the lights that outlined their garden, though. A small plot that had grown into something far greater than anyone had imagined, especially a woman who had once been told she lived too small, only to discover that she had simply been waiting for the right soil in which to fully bloom.